I'd like to introduce Bill McDonald from Prothman and Associates, who the city has hired to handle the process. And so without further ado, I'll turn it over to Bill. I'd like Bill to tell us a little bit about his background.
I'm sorry to interrupt. It doesn't appear that his microphone is picking up at all for the live stream.
Yeah, that's because he hasn't talked yet. Okay. I asked. Okay. Okay, at this point, I'd like to turn it over to Bill McDonald, who's going to discuss his background first and then get into the process of hiring a new city manager. Bill?
All right.
Yeah, let's take roll first.
Sorry, this is getting everybody in here is fun. Councillor Randall,
Present.
Councillor Runyon,
Present.
Councillor Long,
Here via Zoom.
Councillor Richardson,
Present.
Mayor Mays,
Present.
and Councillor McLaughlin is on his way.
All right. Are we ready? Well, first, I'd like to thank you for allowing Prothman to help you with this process. And it's a very important decision. And we have good experience. Right there. Is that better? It's these masks. These masks are crazy.
You can drop it if you want to, in my view,
But we have good experience with recruiting city managers, county administrators, and chief executives. So I know we can do a good job for you. My background, I had 30 years in city management. I had 6 years in counties and a number of years in council government. So I've got over 40 years in local government. 6 cities as the city manager, or in the city manager's office, 5 as city manager in Oregon and Washington. And we've kind of talked about that a little bit. So I kind of know what it takes to be a city manager, and I've done a fair number of city manager recruitments in Oregon and Washington. So that's my background. I have an MPA. I am an ICMA credentialed manager, and I've sat in the chair for a lot of years. So that's my background. Any questions about that? All right. I'd like to talk a little bit about the process. One of the reasons I'm here is what we call stakeholder, and you have a form that I typically will work off of that I ask some questions, but the important thing is what you're looking for in your next city manager, and there are a variety of other questions there, but also what the issues are, what's special about the Dalles right now that somebody that's considering the city as a candidate should know about, because there are a lot of things going on besides COVID in all the cities. So we will build a profile. A lot of information has already been sent to our office about the job description and background on the city, And I'll do a report on our meeting. And we will are scheduled to have a draft profile for you to look at next week. And I think that's a realistic timeline. And to stand that up, if the turnaround time to review it isn't long, we can stand that up next week. And that's what the schedule calls for. And what that means is standing up, it means it will be on our website and our Facebook and other social media. And then we call for the advertising to start on the 1st of January. The month of December in recruitment is kind of what we call the dead zone, but you will have the profile stood up by the middle of December. And over the holidays is always kind of real quiet, but it'll be up there and it'll be active. We do a lot of specialized advertising. I provide some information to Izetta about that, and she can make that available to you at some point in time. Recently did recruitments for Mount Angel and for Lebanon, and she's got an example of the places that we would advertise. Our focus is to advertise places and stand the profile up in places where we're going to get the right kind of candidate, somebody that knows this business, and your typical candidates are going to be in city management, special district, maybe county government. And that's kind of one of the questions for you is what do you see as experience background? But those are typically where you're going to get candidates. And we get the word out to Profit has an amazing database of people that are in the business. And it isn't just in city management, but in public management. And we do email blasts to these people. We do direct mailing to them. So we pretty much hit the people that are going to be really good candidates very well. What you hire me for after closing is it's my responsibility to screen through these candidates and to interview them, the ones that I think get over the bar, and bring to you in a work session the ones that I would recommend for you to interview. And typically, a city will pick up to 5 to interview and for a final interview. If I recommend somebody, then that comes with the Prothman guarantee. If they don't work out, we do the process over for you. So I won't guarantee. If it says final interview, then it comes with a guarantee. So so that screening is kind of one of the things that you buy from us, and we'll come to you with what we think are the best candidates. But that's your decision. When we have the work session to talk about that, then we'll talk about process. Final process typically involves a couple of panels. One of them would be the council. Another one would be, I would say, a combination of people, both internal, from the organization and then from the community. But we'll talk about that in more detail. Typically, we'll do a reception, and then we'll also do a tour. And it's a fairly good, it's a good process, and it works well. We have a very, very, very low failure rate with our recruitments. And so, I mean, we're proud of that. That basically is a process. Do you have any questions on process? If not, yes, sir.
Do you have any thoughts on
What level of, if at all, we should be including staff in that second panel, that stakeholder panel?
Yeah, I will talk to the mayor a little bit about that. I think that's not uncommon, and the thing that I would suggest is that not a majority, but I think they should be represented. I think you should have maybe a couple of city managers in the area, some people from your business community, some key players in the community, and on that second panel. First panel would be the council. The reception is a very important event, and I think staff should be and the community should be involved in that. In that, we always have an opportunity for people to make written comments on the candidates. Candidates are brought to the reception, the finalists, and that's an opportunity for both staff and the community to weigh in. So that's the short answer to your question. That composition is very important, and we'll talk about it more in the work session, but the process works well. One of the things that I, having been in local government a long time and competing for these types of positions, one of the things that's really important to me is that the process is absolutely fair, and that the candidates are treated with a high level of respect. And that's important. I've been through processes where that didn't happen, where you really felt like it was not humane, and that isn't going to happen with this prize. It's going to be very respectful of the candidates. And I really do always have candidates say, that was really a good process. We really appreciated it. We really thought it was totally professional. And that's what you want to hear. You want to hear that, man, I felt like a meat market, that isn't going to happen with this process. It's going to be fair. It's going to be respectful. It's going to get a really good group of candidates. All right.
Any other questions for Bill? I have a couple of.
A process? No. Processes, I'm good.
Are you good?
Well, I wanted to ask you a couple things about COVID. Number one, do you expect COVID as it is right now to affect the number of candidates? And number two, how does the COVID situation affect the reception and your experience?
Okay. So the answer to the first one is yes. What our experience has been is that the number of candidates has been down just across the board. And you're seeing that on the news, the response to open positions is, I don't exactly know why that is. The caveat is it's a very specialized position, and if people are ready to make a move, or they're in transition, they're going to apply. But you're not going to get 50 applications. I don't think you'll get 30. I was telling the mayor that applications that are good applications, that'll be good. I mean, that will be good. So the community that's involved in this business is not a huge community. I mean, even when you include other public sector, we would expect to get some department level people, but when you talk just about people that have experience as city managers, it is not a huge universe. So that's one of the things that's going on there. What was your second?
The reception.
Oh, the reception. Okay. I just did a reception. It was the first one in about a year for a PUD director position up in Washington, and it came off fine. The wrinkle was that we had to have a the access, Zoom access for the public to see it. And the district attorney, I don't want to call him district, the special district attorney said that, it wasn't exempt from that. So, and Washington has fairly strict laws about having public access. But we had a in-person reception that went well. People were careful, and but it's been the first one we've had in about a year, or maybe a little more than that. I think both the in-person interview and the reception are awfully important. We've done a fair number of Zoom interviews for these positions in the last 2 years, and the dynamic is different than having the person in front of you that you can kind of touch. And so to the extent that we're able to do it, and I think there is a way to do it, being able to do it live would be good. If we have to do it Zoom, that's what we have to do. Not to digress too much, what some entities have done is done a Zoom interview and said that we're going to bring the two that we like the best in for a personal, which is kind of a final and then a final. And that isn't a bad way to go, but I do think that part of the reason for the reception is to engage the community in the decision, and I think community engagement's important. I went through the I could take my mask off. Yes. Want me to take it off?
Mhm.
All right, okay. Train of thought. What was I talking?
Reception.
Community engagement.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, okay, thank you. Thank you. Showing my age. I went through the whole process with Lebanon and through the final interviews even. And there was a lot of conversation with the council about we just don't want to hire the city manager unless we can have the community engaged. And at that point in time, nobody was doing receptions because COVID was cooking, and then we still didn't have the vaccine. And so they actually parked the process. They had some really good candidates, and they hired an interim. And I think the interim is still there. So they made that decision that that reception is so important for the engagement of the community that we want to hire a city manager when the community has had the opportunity to be involved. So I just thought I'd add that because it was it was an interesting experience. Everybody's had to adjust to this 800-pound gorilla called COVID. Right? Okay.
I think Dan had a question.
Yes.
Bill, with regard to advertising, how far afield geographically do you intend to sort of cast the net?
Okay. So just generally, ICMA, City Manager Association, which is international, the Public Managers Association, which is, I think, primarily the United States, but probably that might be international too. West Coast City Manager associations like Oregon City Manager Association, Washington City Manager Association, California, Nevada, Idaho, Colorado. Not so much on the East Coast. That we hit that, we'll get it because the ICMA gets that. But we'll put a lot of juice on the West Coast, and then the email blasts are going to go out, to
Thank you.
pretty much the United States. All right. So, I mean, we'll get applicants from all over the country, but my experience is the farther away they are, the more problematic the level of their interest is. I mean, you know what I mean. So if they're a really good candidate, I'm still going to interview them. You know, and I'm gonna probe. I'm gonna find out what's the hook, why the Dells, what are you interested in? And sometimes they'll say, well, my daughter lives there, you know. And I mean, I've had things like that happen. Then I'll say, okay, I now I get that, you know. All right. Any more questions? All right. So you do have the questions, but I guess what would be helpful to me would be if we could do it kind of one at a time. What are you looking for, and what do you see as the major issues in the city that the city manager coming in ought to know about? And we could take the first question and then come back and take the second question if you'd like to do it that way, or we can take them both at the same time. Either one. So we'll just start
Yeah,
and say, let's do that first question. What are you looking for? And you got some kind of prompts down there in terms of experience but what do you see as being really important? A clone of Julie? No? All right. All right. Who wants to start?
I'll start.
Okay.
Unless you want to go.
Go ahead.
You look like you were still writing. My questions will evolve as I tend to work that way. I'm not looking for a startup. I think the city needs somebody with some maturity. That's a flexible word in several ways. But I don't think we're looking for somebody just starting out with the degree of activities that we have currently on the plate in this community. So that would be my preference at this point. The other thing that's really big for me, and I've been in a few of these situations with the county here and whatnot, and with our port district, it's really important to me that the person that we hire is somebody who has a history of being involved in the community. It could be service clubs, it could be whatever, it could be just getting out there and making sure they're available to talk to groups and things like that. I think that goes a long ways towards, the longevity you talked about with the average length of time a city manager stays on the docket. The role in the community and winning over people so the community understands what they're about and how problems are going to be solved, not just in meetings, not just with department heads. And we have one right now, Julie Kruger, that makes an attempt. She's on radio shows. She belongs to service clubs. I'm kind of looking for some of those, and even more so. Time is always an element with a busy job like city manager, but a history of that kind of effort in their past positions would be really important to me.
Okay. Got to be a city manager experience, or can it be in a special
Not
district?
necessarily. It could be other forms of management.
Public
a lot-
sector, private sector, prefer public sector, prefer cities, counties.
That's a very good question. I hadn't really thought about that. I may have to do a little more research on that. And initially, public sector, but secondly, I'd look very hard at somebody who had private sector experience in the areas that the community deals in. That could be very worthwhile.
Okay.
Is that a good enough start?
Yeah, that's a good stuff. So we're going to just stay on that first question of
Mhm.
what are you looking at? And we'll come back to the issues in the community. So who wants to be next?
I would agree with Rod. I think maybe not necessarily city management experience, but possibly a subordinate position, perhaps even with like a larger entity, a larger city that might be almost like a lateral position if he comes to a smaller community,
Yeah.
but has that larger.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just some maturity in the position,
All right. Anything else? All right. Sure.
Sorry for being late.
Not a problem.
Timeliness will be an important asset.
They will remind me for the next, well, how long is my term? If we're looking for the perfect person, they would be dynamic in personality, truthful, very detailed, uses technology, and as Rod said, involved with the community. I think those are all very important qualities that I'm looking for. And, basically integrates into our community. It's important that I would look for someone that understands a smaller community, maybe not a large metropolitan area. It is different.
Yep.
And I would be looking for that as well. That's an important quality. I think.
Dan?
In addition to those things that have been spoken about already, I guess I would be looking for someone that has some personnel management abilities, some history there. Not everybody's sort of born to that. It's, we're looking to hire a leader for our community, so they need to have some leadership and qualities in that sense of dealing not just with the community, but with the staff they manage.
So record as a leader.
And that could be private or public sectors. I guess one other thing I would be interested in is seeing somebody that has a little bit of a diverse skill set or education, somebody that's bringing some particular background to the table, whether it's, and I don't have a specific degree or career track in mind, just somebody who's bringing some, can bring some ideas to the conversation.
So just to probe on that, I mean, that gets kind of to issues. Do you have, for instance, economic development or finance issues, or sometimes people will say, our biggest issue is financial right now, and we need to have somebody that really is good, but really good at budget, and or other times it'll be intergovernmental relations. The relationship with the counties not where it ought to be, with school districts not where it ought to be. So we need somebody that's a diplomat. So anything ring your bell in terms of a special skill set? I kind of assume in this job that anybody that comes to this job has got to have people skills, soft skills, as they call them. That's just kind of a given. And they also have to be politically astute, and that means, not a political operator, but just understands, the dynamic of a city operating and the relationships that are involved with the city. All right, who else?
Let's move to Darcy. Darcy, do you have any comments?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So one of the things that we're working on right now is our community visioning. And so I would really like to see our next city manager be able to take what comes out of that visioning process and actually implement it. So I'm thinking that we need somebody with some strong skills, especially around project management and being able to create and track measurable goals for the city. Two other things that I think that our city manager must be able to have some experience with and a good track record would be for housing and economic development. We have a real housing shortage right now, and this is becoming crucial for us. And I think that we need somebody who can move forward very quickly on this issue, not somebody that needs to get up to speed or doesn't have any idea what that means for a small town like ours. I would also like to see them have some positive strength-based supervisory skills. I think Counselor Richardson and maybe somebody else also mentioned this. We have a bit of a culture issue right now, and I would like to see, along with the town culture, I'd also like to see the city hall culture with the employees taken to the next level. And I feel that it's very important that they must live in the Dalles, even if that's a short transition period, you know, while they're moving here. I wouldn't be willing to accept someone who refused to move to the Dalles and live here. I don't want them living in Hood River or White Salmon or wherever. I want them in the Dalles. And they really have to be forward looking, and they have to be willing to take the Dalles to the next level, and no more just doing things the way they've always been done, if that's what council directs them to do and the community directs them to do. So basically, I need somebody with a lot of energy and enthusiasm and experience.
Good. That's a lot of good stuff.
Do we have a residency requirement now for the city manager? We do. Okay.
I was
So
going
it's
to ask that
required.
question. I mean, and do they have to live in the city or within so many minutes of the city? They what? You have to live inside the city. Okay, that's not uncommon. I always wanted to. However, I will say that when I took the job in Snohomish, there was the housing market was just tight as a tick, and it took me a while to be able to live in the city, and the city allowed me to take the time to get to a place where I could buy a place that actually was in the urban growth boundary, and then they annexed in. So I finally got it done, but it took a couple of years.
Our city manager, our city attorney had his hands raised. Jonathan, did you want to comment?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to go over the charter residency requirements since it was brought up. And that's correct that, as soon after getting hired as possible, the city manager shall reside in the city. However, the charter does indicate that the city council may waive that requirement, but absent any waiver, it appears the city manager must remain a resident of the city of the Dalles.
Does it have any kind of within certain number of months of hiring? Nothing like that, huh?
The exact
Okay.
language is the manager need not reside in the city or the state when appointed, but promptly thereafter, the manager shall become a resident of the city of the state. And so, reasonably, I would say on their start date within, a couple weeks.
Thank you.
So that typically that will be a subject if it is even an issue that you would just discuss when you do a contract. And I'm assuming that you haven't. I shouldn't assume this, but I'm assuming you're had some experience with a contract for your chief executive.
Mhm.
A clarifying question.
Did you have a question, Darcy?
Yeah, I have a clarifying question about that. The contract seems a little bit too late if what I'm saying, and I don't know if the rest of council agrees, but if what I'm saying, that is a deal breaker for me, I think that you need to have that in the description so that people have an expectation, because we have had department heads who do not live in the city, our last two planning directors. And so I think the contract is too late to discuss that.
That's not untypical, is it, to put in the advertisement or the 3-page thing you send out that we expect?
Yeah, we put it what you got in your code, which is that the city manager is expected to live in the city. The legislative body has the ability to adjust that if necessary, but your expectation is that they live in the city. So we can do that.
Okay.
Yeah, that's how I took it.
Yeah.
And that's what we'll do that.
Okay. Thank you.
Not a problem.
I can't hear Julie speak at all.
Julia pointed out that what I was talking about
Apologize.
was making sure it's in the brochure that advertises the position. And that's the way Bill took it. So,
Yeah, that's very common. No, that's the norm, is that the city manager would live in the city. And I always wanted to, because I want to be able to say, I pay the same taxes and I pay the same water bill you do. and et cetera, et cetera. So I get that. All right.
Okay.
The second question, let me go through the stuff that I have here. This is what I've got, and I said I might have more maturity, and experience. In public sector would be desirable, and city manager would be desirable. History of commitment, engagement with the community. Once again, public sector. Could include a department person a department head, a level position. I'm not saying, I'm saying anywhere, not just here, but just somebody that's moving up from a director position in a department into their first city manager. So you're willing to go there. Somebody that's dynamic, detailed, is not afraid of technology. That one actually pops up regularly, is that technology is important, and we want somebody that is on the front of the curve, not in the back. Understands small community. Somebody that has personnel management ability, and there's a couple of those strength-based supervisory skills. And what I kind of heard in there was that you want somebody that has some organizational development, moxie, that there may be some opportunity to do organizational development, and that can be a positive. That should be a positive process, but that includes things like accountability, evaluation, performance, goals, that type of thing. Somebody that's a leader, has a record as a leader, not just with the organization, but in the community. You're willing to consider diverse background, which means, if they've got a good record of being successful, that you're willing to take a look at folks. You're interested in somebody that has worked with visioning, and that's a process in itself. It's goal-driven cities that have a sense of where they're going. It's a very common theme now. We need to know where we're heading this ship, and so having that visioning skill is important. Housing and economic development background right now. Housing is a huge issue everywhere, and economic development always is, because that has a correlation with revenues and quality of life. And sort of kind of the overarching thing is somebody maybe that's a little entrepreneurial. So did I miss anything, or did I go overboard on something? Is that about right? Good. All right. Is that good? Okay. Let's go to the issues in the community. I know I've heard already a few. Housing was one that popped up. Economic development. The housing one is that all housing, or the entry level housing? Do you have developable land in the city?
Well, that's a big issue too. But I would say, while speaking for myself, all kinds of housing, but we have limited space because we cannot expand our urban growth boundary.
You cannot, or you are not going to?
Cannot, because of the Gorge Commission. Has basically, well, let's just say the requirements to expand an urban growth boundary within the scenic area is difficult, if not impossible.
Okay, so you've got a limited amount of developable land. Are you looking at having to do some redevelopment to get the housing done? So somebody that then has been involved with both housing and then maybe urban renewal type experience might be a good fit.
Mhm.
All right, so that's one, or two, actually, maybe. What else? Now we're talking about what are the issues, and look at this from the standpoint of, I want to reasonably fairly represent what a city manager would be coming in and facing that are important to the community and to the legislative body.
You want to go first?
Please, Mr. Mayor.
Oh, well, I think like a lot of cities in the Northwest, the homeless issue is certainly an issue. I also think we have a huge issue coming up that is actually a very positive issue. We recently have negotiated the possibility of a fourth and fifth data center here in the Dalles with Google. And it's going to be bringing in a significant amount of money over the next 25 years. I think that's a positive thing for a potential applicant to consider because, you know, I know and Bill, we've both applied for city manager jobs. One of the things you always look at is the financial viability of the city, and you don't want to necessarily take a position with a sinking ship that is in dire straits. We're not going to be in dire straits. We're going to be doing very well financially. And one of the issues that the challenge for a new city manager is to participate in the process where that money is going to be allocated.
It's nice to have revenue.
Yeah.
And Oregon does not make it easy.
Yeah, and I think that should be part of the advertising. The city is in very strong shape financially. Actually, we were before the Google thing happened just recently, and so this is going to be even more financially viable.
So I apologize. I have a low grade asthma. When I start talking, then I get that tickle in my throat, and that's what I'm experiencing. It doesn't always happen. It seems to want to happen today. So I apologize.
I've got an inhaler in my briefcase.
A little scotch. All right. What else?
The silence is deafening. So people just, Darcy, if you have anything, you just speak up because it's pretty quiet in here right now.
You're still on issues facing the community, facing the city manager?
So I'll just throw some things out. I heard from Councilmember Long, something that sounded to me a little bit like organizational culture, organizational development. That's internal. That's more internal. How about relationships with your other entities in the community, your major stakeholders, and you know, are you doing well there, or you need somebody that you kind of said you need somebody that has that ability to be a diplomat, but do you have any ruptured relationships that need to be repaired?
I think we have very good relationships.
Yeah,
I do too.
Wish you there.
I also think it's vital that the new city manager be able to preserve and maintain those relationships.
It's more accurate.
Yeah.
Bill, to my mind, I'm not sure how to articulate this very, very cleanly, but it certainly feels like the Dalles is on a bit of a threshold of change. We've got some generational change, some retirements, obviously, but we also have sort of opportunity to be thinking about where we are as a community, where we want to go. And I think this is what people are speaking to. We have a visioning process, and unlike a lot of communities, we will be more or less be able to fund what we feel we need.
So would you say it again? You don't fund, or you need?
We will have the ability to
Oh, you
more
have
or
the-
less to, feasibly to fund things we think our community really needs. So I guess I'd be looking for a city manager that can help us sort of prioritize projects in a big picture and then execute on a project management or oversight sort of basis.
Do you have any big capital projects that are in the works? Are you redoing your sewer plant or your water plant, or building a new city hall or anything like that?
Well, the Dog River Pipeline is a huge infrastructure project that has been on the forefront of our wish list now for decades. And we're getting to a point where we're just a few $1 million short of making that happen. But we're on the cusp of making that a reality.
And what is the?
It's a water line.
Water line, okay.
Yeah. A huge water line. As far as the infrastructure goes too, we're going to be working with Google to build a new water and sewer system down in the port area to accommodate their data centers as well as provide additional water capacity for the rest of the city.
Oh, okay.
Oh.
So that'll meet the Google's need and the whole city's need. So
Correct.
It's a
Right.
new, and is your source the Columbia?
No.
Okay.
No.
Not allowed.
Hell no.
It'll
Okay.
diversify our sources and our storage. It's
Yeah.
it's a big package with lots of moving parts.
About $28 million is the estimate right now. So
Okay. So so did you say what your source, or do you have ground, is it surface water?
our
or-
water supply, yeah, in wells, aquifer.
You have well, okay. That's great.
That's part of the infrastructure improvements that are going to be happening with
Yeah.
new wells.
Wells are a good thing, as long as you've got good aquifers.
I think our view is we have a pretty good water system. It's going to be improved immensely, and we should have the funds to do it.
Yeah.
So we'll somebody with that kind of experience is certainly helpful.
Okay.
I think other changes coming to the Dalles with new proposals, excuse me. The medical center up on the hill, relocating the potential. That facility, which has been an athletic facility, is moving to another portion. All of these changes are going to need leadership and working in partnership with county and other entities in our community. So all of these changes are tremendous changes, and they're going to need leadership.
Okay.
A lot of construction and disruption, I think,
Yes.
with that.
Darcy,
Yes, thank you. I was also going to just point out that something that comes up a lot is the appearance of our town. And so I think, probably be good to let the person know coming in that we anticipate improving the appearance of our town. And we started a lot of art projects thanks to the mayor and some other things that are going on. And so I would just, I just think that's an important piece of when someone's looking at the town and whether or not they want to come here, is that we're not looking to stay the same as we are. We are actually looking to clean that image up as well.
Okay, good. So that's kind of also kind of hand in glove with the visioning, kind of
Mhm.
keeping an eye on the Dalles and what it looks like and just selling that. Anything else in that whole area of issues? Challenges, opportunities. I go to the kind of the last question. Is there anything about the Dalles that you'd want a candidate to know coming in? That you want them to know about the area or the community?
well, I think the scenic beauty is certainly and I would hope that the brochure would have some nice pictures of Mount Hood and the river, and it's really a beautiful area. And the other thing I've said this before, I really think we should stress is the financial strength of the city. I think would be certainly an attraction for any prospective candidate.
Okay, you've got pretty good longevity in your organization, pretty stability
Yes.
in your leadership, and so that's a plus.
I'm sorry, Tim. I remember when back in the day, the ICMA newsletter would have the number of city managers they've had over a given period of time. They don't do that anymore, do they?
So,
The ICMA newsletter, which is probably the best means of advertising the position, used to have, for example, the Dalles 4 city managers in the last 30 years.
yeah,
They don't do that anymore.
they don't. Isn't there a newsletter online now?
Yeah, there is.
It's online. I think that's pretty much what they do now.
I didn't think they did, but I think it's a strength that I think any prospective candidate would be, Julie, what, 7 years? And then her predecessor was here 18. So that's 25 years among two. And then what about the one before that?
That's a good one.
Paul Cook, was it?
Longevity.
We don't want to, we'll just stick with the top two.
Go with the first two.
Oh, I have a factoid that I didn't tell you. So back in 97, I was a finalist for city manager of the Dalles.
Mhm.
And I got offered the position as city manager in Snohomish. And I said, well, a bird in hand, and my daughter had just moved up to Seattle. So I took that job, but I actually was a finalist here. So just a
That's when Nolan-
that's a
that's when
small
Nolan-
world comment.
That's when Nolan was hired.
Yeah.
When you talk about challenges and opportunities, kind of a different thing to look at is we have a team that's by all intensive gauges is a very good, solid team, been here a long time, the majority of them. But that also brings the question, when a new manager comes in, will there be temptation for retirements to occur? People just decide for whatever reason, they won't be able to, they don't see them working with this person because they have a loyalty to that person or what have you. So I'm talking about team building. So that might be, not only keeping the team we have where needed, which is every case as far as I can see, but if there are openings and whatnot, how they go about team building is really important.
Yeah, you kind of touched on organizational development, and I think that's a part of it.
Yeah.
Somebody coming in after an incumbent's been here for 7, and then the other one was, how many did you say? 20?
18 years.
18 years. That's extraordinary. That's extraordinary
So
longevity.
a question on how they go about becoming the new guy, the new gal, whatever
So
it happens to be.
the organization is always going to be a little bit nervous.
Yeah.
So when we go through the interview process and in the recruitment process, we want to make sure we got somebody that is sensitive, has empathy for the organization, for employees, but also is wants an organization. I always call it excellence. I was proud, I got the Excellence Award in City Managers Association in Washington. And my goal was to have an organization that everyone felt was an excellent organization. Everybody was doing their job and they were doing it well. We operated lean, but that's what you want. You want a place where people are proud to come to work and they do a good job. And you want somebody that is a leader that can make that happen. I'm not assuming that it isn't happening now, but you want to make sure that whoever you bring in has that, the empathy and also a leader.
Kind of an elephant in the room too, that when people from other areas watch the national news, they hear of a certain large city which has changed the advertising of our state. I won't mention their name because we have nothing to do with any of that. And it's a very positive, some very positive growth potential here in my view.
Right.
And we have the funds and are going to have more funds to do the things we want to do. So I think there's a lot of positive things ahead, and I prefer to be on that view plane. And although every community and every state has some of those problems that you see on the news, that's not really the majority here. I think we're on a good track to take care of some of the smaller things that have come along. So I really separate the Dalles from the major metro cities in this state.
I get that. And the same comments about up north, in Seattle. I mean, Seattle and Portland have kind of gotten a national reputation lately.
Okay. I just want to make sure we said something today.
The flip of that is that, the small communities are kind of, some of them are seeing a Zoom boom, that people are able to move their jobs into smaller communities and do their jobs. And you may benefit from that. So,
And to kind of end that, our financial departments actually won awards for how well we do financially and whatnot, and how they do their audits, and the
good.
integrity is extremely high financially in this community.
that's great. That's where it's got to be, for the public. For sure.
Tim?
I'd like to circle around and look at this, what the candidate would need to know about the Dalles when considering the position.
Yeah.
For many thousands of years, the Dalles has been a trading place for Native American population, and it is the economic shopping center of the entire region. People come here to shop for groceries, for cars, for all of their needs. And that is a strong point, I believe, for our community. Also, tourism has increased since we've opened up the access to the river. And with the boats that have been coming in on an increasing level, tourism is up. And that makes our city very, the ability to have opportunities to develop economically. So those are all things that are in the future for the Dalles, I believe.
All right. So I've got scenic, the beauty of the area
It
is an attraction, financial stability of the city, longevity in the organization, longevity in the city manager's position. It's an economic shopping center for the region, and then tourism is on the ascent.
I have one more.
Okay.
The people. I'll give you an example. I was cleaning my van out. There was an envelope. I took it to I didn't know it, but inside that envelope was $20. It went into the garbage. The garbage came and opened and saw it and pulled it out, brought it up to the house, knocked on the window, gave it to my wife. Things like that, occur in this community continually, and it's the people that is the strength, in my opinion.
I was just glad you cleaned your van.
Well, that's exactly what you're talking. That's kind of that small, even I hesitate to call you rural, but you're kind of rural.
When does that happen?
It's good. I mean, it's a great thing.
And that's just one story. And there are many that are happening around our community all the time.
Did you all see the letter to the editor last week from the couple in Florida? Isetta has a copy. I gave it to her. You got to read that. It's really, really incredible people that came here and got in trouble, and they had so many people help them, and wrote a nice letter to the editor about other people in the Dalles.
That's good. So you got sensitive, caring people that help each other and look after each other. Takes a village, they say.
Whatever
So,
it's worth, we are the largest city in the gorge. So
your population was 15,019,
closer to 16 now.
closer to 16 now. So that's a
Yeah.
good size. That's a good size.
The whole
community.
county is like 26,000, so the majority is right here.
Yeah.
But if you
So-
go out on West 6 on a Thursday evening and try to get through the intersections, it's packed.
Yeah.
And our city is packed. At this time, every parking place at Fred Meyer's and the other shopping entirely packed.
Right. Well, that's a good thing. That's a good thing. So I added, there's the whole business, the Native American community has a strong connection to the Dalles. And was there anything else in that whole, is there something there I missed?
With regard to makeup of the town, I think there are a couple of interesting bits that may or may not be useful to know for your conversations and interviews. One is that we have a really, to my mind, we have a really interesting mix of people, in that we are not a tourist town or just a this town or a that town, that we've got a real sort of several sort of areas of industry and background, and a pretty interesting diversity of economic backgrounds, culturally or politically, if you look at like presidential elections where I think it's like 49, 49, 48, 48, a very evenly split. So it makes us not a west side town or an east side town, but sort of our own special flavor. And we have a pretty significant Latino community that is maybe not as represented or as engaged as they might be. I think that's just sort of, I don't know what you might call a community evolution, an increase in population, but not necessarily an increase in engagement.
So like 20 years ago, what was the dominant industry in the Dalles?
Aluminum plant,
Again?
aluminum plant
The aluminum plant, okay.
and agricultural cherry production.
Okay.
But and now it's vineyards and cherry production and tourism. So it's a broader base than what it was in 20 years ago.
So you're
Medical services, Huge
Yeah, medical
employment.
services with Celilo Cancer, yes.
number one employer is the hospital. Information services, not huge, but several hundred people.
The Cancer Institute here is a big deal, the whole medical community. But also we have a college here as well.
Right.
Communities aren't lucky enough to have that. We have a two-year community college
Right.
here. So
An expanding one, yeah.
Life Flight emanates out of our airport, and that wouldn't have been possible if we didn't have a merging of the airport. And it's actually in Washington, but it's mutually managed by Clickitat County and or the Dalles proper. And that has provided opportunity for expansion of the Google in situ. It's provided, and Life Flight is a regional, which means, having that right next to us gives us so much more opportunity to survive if we have a heart attack or an accident. So that's huge.
So if something like that, would they hustle you to Portland? Or would they hustle you down to Bend?
Portland generally.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that would be closer, wouldn't it?
That's all right. It's OHSU generally.
Okay. All right. I don't know how long that you wanted to go, Mayor. What I was going to say is that you all have my business card. And if you have something you want, you've also got this list of the questions. Please feel free to amplify, send me email. Don't mail anything to that Prothman address. Just put it in an email because I work out of my home. I don't go into that office too much sometimes. And I'm happy to, and my cell number is there. If you want to call and chat about or amplify anything, feel free to do that. That's the norm. So anything else that you want to chat about, Mayor?
Yeah, I'd like to ask the city council how they feel about the panels and having two panels made up of the people that Bill described, and also how you feel about the reception.
Right, so this is the
Reception.
final process.
Yeah.
Typically would have two panels. One would be the council. The other one would be, that's panel X or panel Y. And some employees, some stakeholders in the community, maybe some city managers.
Mhm.
And then, so anyway, that's the discussion is who you would on. I would recommend that you have a majority from outside the organization, but I think the organization should be represented.
Okay. Are we okay with that?
Yes.
Darcy?
Yeah, I can talk to you in private, but I have some concerns about actual people being put on the second panel, not just types of people. And then I also want to point out that I would like to have more women so that there's an equal balance, and this might also be another opportunity to pull in some of the Hispanic, Latino people to get them involved and make sure we get their perspective, since that's something that we want to emphasize in the future. Just particularly because I'm the only woman on the city council right now, I think we should have some other opportunities to get a different perspective.
Right. So that's always a good discussion, and you got my thoughts on that. And on the reception, obviously that ought to be live, and it's going to be live, and it's a good opportunity for the organization to come. It's nice to have a reception where the candidates will be there. They should all be there. The finalists should be there, and the opportunity to introduce them. Typically we'll have them there, and then I'll surprise them by asking them to say a few words about themselves.
When they're there, typically, when you say finalists, 2, 3, what are we talking about generally?
Well, that's your call. I mean, I'm used to not more than 5, and it could be fewer than that. I mean, it's going to depend on the response you get. You want the best, but you'll pick who your finalists are.
Right.
And they'll be there. It's very common for a city manager position for them to bring their spouse, and if you have a reception, you should encourage them to do that, but you don't. Some will, some won't. But I think that's always good. And give them an opportunity to talk about themselves. We always have comment cards for everyone that participates in the reception, so they'll give you some feedback, and you'll get some interesting feedback, and it's just a part of the information that you get to make a good informed decision. And that's what you want. And the community, I've had receptions. I just had one for this PUD. It was up in Whatcom County, clear up by Canada. And I didn't know what kind of response they'd get, but they did a nice job of putting it on. They had a little bit of food, just finger food and stuff. And it was well attended. It complied with the COVID requirements in Washington, which are strict, which meant that there was a Zoom link so that somebody could actually ask a question. The way I like setting those up after we have the initial introductions, I like to have a place where the candidate is staged, in the room, and say you got 5 places. People can go to those places instead of trying to mix and walk back and forth. That works really well. And it's interesting. People will gather around the candidates and at each of their stations. And a successful reception is one where you almost have to tell people that, hey, we got to shut this thing down, And that was kind of what we had the last one I did. And that's the first one we've done in a while because of COVID. But you'll get some good, number one, it's inclusive. The community feels like they've got some say in the process, and you want that. And it's an opportunity for the organization to maybe some people that wouldn't otherwise to come and plug in and stakeholders in the community. So it's really all good.
Bill, remind me, you said advertising the position to start in January, right about the first of the year.
But the putting ads, the stuff, social media and our websites and Facebook and that'll happen almost immediately when the profile is, but specific ads that will come out in January, they won't hit until January.
Right.
We'll start doing it right away.
Leap forward and remind me, please, when do you expect to have a list of finalists, whether it's 3 or 4 or 5, to council?
All right. I've got that.
And we probably have this in the paperwork. But
You've got
just-
it. You've got the
Sure, I
schedule, and I've got it right here, so I don't mind.
Revised schedule was sent out.
Did you see this?
28.
So the work session to talk to you about the candidates that I've interviewed and the ones that I recommend is the week of February 28th to March 4th.
The 14th through the 21st says interviews with the top 8 to 15 candidates that you'll be doing.
That's me.
Yeah.
I'll be screening and interviewing the top candidates, whatever that number is. I mean, I will interview the ones that get over the bar that I would recommend, which would be the ones that we would guarantee. And I've been doing this long enough. I know who's going to, how to
Thank
get
you.
over the bar.
Yep.
So it's vital that the week of February 28th through March 4th, that all 5 or all 6 of us have to make sure we're available.
The finals 14th to the 18th of March. The work session.
That too,
is-
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the work session, as you said, February 28th and March 4th.
Right.
And the interviews have tentatively been scheduled for what days?
The final interview is 14th to 18th.
What? 14th and
The 18th
of March, right?
And, you want to have this open long enough, and having this thing fall over the holidays is always kind of a challenge, because you've got, very honestly, between now and right after the first of the year, people they're kind of in the holiday zone, but we'll still be getting stuff on our website and on our social media sites and LinkedIn and Facebook and all the others. All right.
Good.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
I just want to say one last thing. When you consider a new city manager, there's 2 things that make up that candidate. One is their professional experience, and the other is what you call the soft skills, honesty, integrity, et cetera, et cetera. I think we've got to be realistic as far as experience goes. And, it'd be great to have a new city manager that has a lot of economic development experience, a lot of labor experience, a lot of all these different types of experiences. But if we do, in fact, get 15 or 20 candidates, I think I'd hate to see us rule people out just because they don't have a lot of certain types of experiences. So I just wanted to point that out.
That's the art and science of the final interview process is,
Mhm.
it's a trade-off. What it boils down to, what I always say is there is a candidate or maybe a couple of candidates that are a perfect fit for the Dalles right now. And as you go through the process, the whole process, that should become apparent. And that's what you're looking for, somebody that's a really good fit. And that's, it's an art and a science. All right.
Anything else, anybody? Last call?
Perfect.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very
Thank you
much.
for
Mhm.
confidence in Prothman.
And I sent everybody an email last week about Bill will be meeting with department directors at 1:30 to get their input.
We need a motion to adjourn.
We don't need a motion, but any last call for any other business to come before for this meeting? Okay, meeting adjourned.
Yes.
Yes.